Domestic Violence, Guide to Understanding and Dealing with Domestic Violence, written by Mandy Humack, narrated by Denise L. Fountain. Introduction. If you are reading this, you probably know more about domestic violence than you ever wanted to, simply because you've been through it or know someone who has. If you've seen it in your own life, your experience is and has been painful, fearful, confusing, and traumatizing. Maybe you don't even know entirely its effect on your life or what exactly to make of it all. You may be in the midst of violence and abuse as you read this, and you're desperate for a way out. The sense of feeling trapped can be paralyzing and overwhelming. If you feel you are in danger, please call 911 or the emergency hotline number in your country. Perhaps the violence you experienced happened last week or decades ago, and thankfully, you are safe now. However, the effects of domestic abuse can last long after one is physically safe, as you are likely to figure out. Or maybe you are reading this and you know something isn't quite right, but you are not sure what to call it. Maybe you think abuse seems too harsh of a word for your experience, so you construct explanations for why this person hurt you, or you blame yourself, or you are hoping and praying he or she will change in time. You are not alone. The number of occurrences of domestic violence is staggering. At least 1 in 4 women falls victim to domestic violence in her lifetime. Chapter 2. Signs of Domestic Violence. The weird thing about domestic violence is the fact that you don't always know that it is there. While almost every city in the United States of America has experienced one case or more of domestic violence sometime in its history, a lot of cases simply go unnoticed and unreported. This could mean a lot of harm to a lot of people, involving physical, mental, sexual, and emotional abuse that can truly harm an individual in a number of ways. One of the best ways that anyone can help to decrease the amount of domestic violence experiences this year is to keep their eyes and ears open for the signs that may be present. The first thing anyone needs to realize is the fact that domestic violence can happen just about anywhere, in just about any family. There is not one single race, social class, or career choice that determines the probability of domestic violence occurring within the walls of a home. It could happen to anyone, and there are a few different ways it can manifest itself. Some of the signs that are manifested in cases of domestic violence include a sense of fear. Children may be afraid of their parents. Elderly people may feel afraid of their caretakers, or husbands or wives may fear their significant other or spouse. These, although they may stem from other things as well, may be signs that something is not right in their relationship and that domestic violence may be occurring there. If there is a lot of demeaning behavior present in the relationship, there may be reason to think that either physical, emotional, or psychological abuse is occurring as well. This might manifest itself in a lot of yelling or mistreatment in front of other people or in other places. If there is also a lack of respect between sexual partners, there may be problems there as well. Possible signs of domestic violence include injuries and bruises. These may occur in some cases. If there are bruises on parts of the body that are easily seen, the abuser wants the victim to feel trapped, isolated, and have nowhere to go. Assault might be the last thing the victim will give as a reason. The abused person may make excuses, like being really clumsy or bumping into objects. They will only reveal the truth if they really want to get out of the relationship. Frequent absences. This is related to the assault or beating the victim might be receiving. If the beating is severe, they might take time off from work or school. Low self-esteem. Many victims of domestic violence have low self-esteem and self-worth. They do not think they matter or are not very confident at work and in school. They feel powerless and they think they have no choice but to stay in the relationship. Fear of conflicts. Battered women and children are generally afraid of conflicts because of their experience. This might lead to assaults and beatings. Changing personality. Some people who appear confident and normal around other people might be acting differently when they are with their abuser or attacker. Victims find it easier to adapt to a different personality around other people than to answer questions about absences or bruises. You may sense an abnormal tension when the abuser enters the room because of eye movement and skittish body language in the victim. This may be a sign that the victim is nervous around the abuser and there might be something more going on. Self-blame. Battered women are often making excuses for their boyfriends or their husbands and blaming themselves. Victims might blame themselves instead of the partner. These abusive or violent behaviors can be helped and changed with therapy. Individual and family therapy can be explored and should be used as more and more people fall victim to domestic abuse. Chapter 3. The Effect on Children of Domestic Violence. Parents do not realize the effects on their kids when they express their temper. A quarrel between couples is nothing abnormal or unusual, but exhibiting the same in front of kids turns out to be really harmful for them. Sometimes these quarrels take the shape of the social evil called domestic violence. The impact of domestic violence on kids is actually the consequence of observing domestic violence at home, where one of their parents is cruelly treating the counterpart. It plays a negative role on the well-being and the developmental growth of children who witness such violence. Children are not just physically, socially, and mentally affected by domestic violence, but they also undergo some behavioral changes. Kids who face such situations often behave either in a rude manner or the fear will reflect in their behavior. In fact, many kids accept such activities that take place between their parents. When these kids grow up, they do the same things with their spouses, and it gets passed on to the next generation. Those children are often found to be depressed as compared to the others, and many of them also become sadistic in the latter half of their life. Kids who are exposed to any kind of domestic violence in their infancy often fail to bond and form safe attachments, which results in shocked reaction and a repressed sense to explore and play. However, like with everything, there are many ways to help the kids who have witnessed domestic violence to overcome their fears and behave like other children again. Here are some of those ways. Most schools keep the faculty of school counselors who provide counseling to the students if required. School authorities can take the initiative to make those students who behave in a slightly unusual manner to go through the counseling process. There are many types of counseling, such as peer support groups, play therapy, classes for anger management, and safety programs to educate children to teach how to take themselves out of unsafe areas and relationships. Offer a safe atmosphere where the kids feel safe at home. Try to look for ways to control the situations which don't involve any kind of hitting, yelling, name-calling, or other forms of physically or verbally violent behavior. Help kids to make a scheduled routine that keeps their day going in a planned manner. Some children are shocked and need serious therapeutic interventions when they have witnessed the violence, while for some, all they need is support and being removed from the situation. Studies by Kronkonsky Charitable Foundation, 2005, show that the risk for children facing juvenile justice systems increases when they have seen domestic violence in their own homes. Children are fully dependent upon their parents for safety and security. Children whose parents are subject to violent behaviors between themselves are never able to rest comfortably until long after the violence ends. As children couldn't express their feelings properly, they become the worst sufferers of this domestic violence. This leaves a lifelong impact on their psyche, and it keeps them from having a good relationship with their parents. When children find their parents or family members fight over small issues, they tend to connect better with people outside of the family. They feel that outsiders give them more peace than their own family members. This may attract them to bad peers and may lead them to leave the home fast. The education of the children also may suffer from domestic violence. They lack focus in their education and have the tendency to underperform. Domestic violence has different effects on boys or girls. When a girl comes across these violent issues, they become more psychologically affected. Girls are seen to lose their self-esteem and feel more distressed. On boys, the violence has a different impact. The chances of boys getting involved in criminal affairs increase due to domestic violence. Children living in such circumstances show signs of distress and stress in their behavior. Their anxiety often manifests in the forms of aches and pains, bedwetting, sleep disorders, aggression, cowardice, or extremely childish behavior. Unable to tolerate the problems, some children, particularly young teens, turn to their friends. They gradually reveal more about the traumatic events, disclosing more and more information to their peers. After some time, their friends catch on and begin to understand what is happening, but often they don't know what to do about it. Since domestic violence has a severe impact on children, we need to be careful to protect our children from becoming a victim to this violence. Chapter 4. The Plight of Men. There is an issue that has been just below the surface for many years, which is domestic violence against men. Society has this wonderful ability of constructing whatever reality it wants. If the societal reality is that male victims of domestic abuse do not exist, then they are treated as if they do not exist. Yes, the majority of domestic violence consists of women, the physically weaker sex. Note that this is mainly physical, not meaning having a weaker character or self-discipline. But the fact that domestic violence against men does exist in some small degree should not be overlooked. Tiger Woods got caught having extramarital affairs and his wife beat him with an iron object. Tiger Woods then became the victim of a joke campaign and his wife walked away with the children and a massive divorce settlement. This is just one example. On top of that, there are many lying, deceitful predator women who are just out for money or revenge and will sue or prosecute their husbands or boyfriends with false claims of abuse. I have seen this in my own life and even in my extended family circles. Innocent men who become the victim of a female lying tongue, thus losing money, freedom, and credibility. Back to Tiger Woods. What if it had been the other way around and Tiger Woods had beaten up his wife after catching his wife playing around with another man? He would have probably gone to jail. That is how it is with domestic violence. There is a widely different treatment of domestic violence depending on if the victim is a man or a woman. The result is that the significant section of the male population is completely abandoned by our society. They don't confess to the abuse because they are afraid of being laughed at, or they are afraid nobody will believe them anyway. The typical history of male victim of domestic violence is that he suffers in silence because no one will listen. If someone does hear him, he might be a freak, a joke. We all know that domestic violence is when a man hits a woman, right? The next thing is that the man must never fight back. If he does, the victim becomes the perpetrator in the eyes of society, and from then on he is doomed. When the violence becomes too much, the male victim leaves the marriage. Everyone knows that the woman is a natural mother, and so she will get custody of any children. Since the woman gets custody of the children, she also gets the money. One of my uncles had to settle for this. His wife had borderline disorder, and because the diagnosis was denied and destroyed by her, she won the court case and received the house, full monthly payments, and a high alimony by a nice guy who had an extremely hard time making ends meet after that. Is society fair? I don't think so. Self-worth is a central issue for victims of both male and female victims of domestic violence. To leave a violent relationship takes courage. It requires at least a small degree of self-esteem. If a person has low level of self-worth, they can stay in the most hideous conditions because they believe that they do not deserve any better. A sense of self-worth is needed to leave a violent relationship, but the violent relationship destroys self-worth. This is a cycle that has to be broken if there is going to be any hope of decreasing domestic violence for both male and female victims. What needs to happen to help battered husbands? Society must recognize that battered husbands exist. They need to know it is not just an exception. It will happen as all things happen in our society. It will be ignored until it cannot be ignored anymore, and then it will become everyone's problem. The second thing that needs to happen is a redefining of no-fault divorce. The current system makes some very sexist assumptions. First is that the wife is a natural parent. And even if she is, that doesn't mean she is the better provider or caretaker. When talking about custody of children, there are two issues that must be considered: violence and alcohol. Another one could be pornography, but at least there is a strong correlation between violence and alcohol. The third thing is that if a man needs to flee a violent marriage with his children, he must receive the same support as a woman fleeing a violent marriage. All this can be summed up as equality. The treatment of male and female victims of a domestic abuse must be equal. Sexual differences of treatment should not exist in this context. Chapter 5. Preventing Domestic Violence. Role of education in domestic violence. Education removes ignorance. It teaches individuals to learn the moral values and improve their character. It provides the strength to the mind, and it gives the power to judge right from wrong. It is said that a nation is being reflected in the well-being of its women. Educated women are well aware of their rights and have often not been taught to blindly obey another. This means education has the power to control such domestic violence. Ways you can help a victim. Conduct can be life-undermining, startling, and confounding. Violence is a sin, and is in this way never justifiable. You might ask yourself, what can I do to help? Here are some ways you can help out when you notice someone might be abused. Here are the 6 stages of helping a possible victim of abuse. Question the victim about the circumstances in a tender way. Make sure to approach the victim in a delicate way, because he or she may feel guilty, vulnerable, or ashamed because of what is happening. Let the victim know that you care and that you've seen certain things and worried about him or her. The shame or pain may be so big that the victim is unwilling to talk. Try not to give in. Tune in, don't judge, and listen carefully. If the victim is willing to talk, tune in and listen carefully. Try not to blame that person for the abuse. It usually is not the victim's fault. Try not to decide for him or her whether or not they should leave their partner, and leave that choice to them. Just focus on support and being there for them. Assist her with developing a security arrangement. Help her settle an arrangement for her and her children. Help her settle an arrangement for her and her kids if a crisis emerges. Include an arrangement for how to get her and the children out of the house. A refuge to go that is sheltered and that her partner doesn't know about. A collection of ID cards, vital telephone numbers, credit cards, and additional cash if necessary. Transportation to the intended destination. A code word that will tell you of the crisis. Get names and telephones of her nearest relatives to let them know of the circumstances so they won't stress out. Assist her with looking for expert help and guidance. Inform her concerning what you know about organizations that offer assistance to abuse victims. Give her names, addresses, and telephone numbers of where she can get help. Your legal privileges. Marriages fall apart because the spouses cannot reach a common ground about a lot of things, and they even resort to the infliction of physical pain. Many times, wives get battered at the hands of their husbands and vice versa. These days, the number of cases on family violence and battering is increasing. If you are not aware of your rights, you will end up losing even more than you want. In some instances, the violence starts as early as the dating stage. A simple misunderstanding could blow up into something huge if the communication between partners is unable to bridge that gap. Post-traumatic stress is also common. Child abuse or bullying may also be termed as emotional abuse. It is possible for physical abuse to happen when a person has a mental problem or has issues with alcohol addiction. If one of the partners is dealing with such issues, it is more likely that the domestic violence will escalate. Domestic violence may be different from one state to the next, and even from one country to another. Documentation of the domestic violence reports will also vary from one country to another. A partner who is kidnapped can be said to be subjected to physical abuse. Things to remember. Domestic violence is a serious offense and covers a number of abuse cases seen around the world. This can include anything from harm to verbal threats and can be carried out by a spouse, ex-spouse, partner, or even family member. As a victim of this form of crime, it's advisable to file a complaint. This can be done at the local court or police station. This is your first step to ensure your safety and security. Once the complaint has been filed, a protection order is served on the abuser, which ensures that they are not allowed to contact you in the near future. Conclusion. The upbringing of a person, as well as his personal beliefs and the culture he grew up in, are going to affect how he looks at the concept of domestic violence. There are cultures where it is forbidden to beat a woman. In some, women are not allowed to abuse their husbands or even slap them a little. Some cases have shown great personal imbalances within both the abuser and the victim. A percentage of those who are abused will look for reasons to engage their spouse in a fight. They see fighting as a way to affirm their affection and love feelings, and by fighting they find pleasure. They find a relationship without argument and fights to be a facade. On the other hand, medical stats show abusers sometimes portray immense satisfaction when they fight. They really love their spouse. Nonetheless, being violent is in their nature, and therefore, they prefer using acts of inflicting injury, pain, and violence to express themselves. Some stats about domestic violence have been used in court as substantive reasons why the perpetrators beat their spouse and they walk away free. We should do all we can to prevent, stop, and report domestic violence, as well as false claims of physical violence against innocent people. This is the duty of all of us, the citizens of our country.